Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today we're looking at the VNAO T-45C Gashawk mod for DCS World. This thing has been out for a number of years, but I've only just come around to trying it out fairly recently, and I gotta tell you, this has become one of my absolute favorite aircraft to fly in DCS World. I think this is one of the best flight models, one of the nicest aircraft, one of the best trainers, some of the most fun, best flying that I think could be had in DCS World. Obviously, as a mod, it also comes with some caveats, and today we're going to cover all the goods and the bads and the uglies in this video, so stay tuned. So as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, the T-45C Gashawk is the current US Navy's carrier-capable fast jet trainer. It is used to train future F-18, F-35 pilots in the US Navy, and we currently have a mod in DCS World by VNAO Simulations, and it's actually been out for quite some years, and boy oh boy do I regret having not tried this mod in years past, because it is absolutely amazing in my opinion. One of the best flight models that I've come across, one of the most believable, realistic flight models. Also, it's an absolutely incredible training aircraft. It's brilliant to fly in formation, as I will probably show you a little bit later on. And of course, it being a carrier-borne aircraft in real life, or at least carrier-capable for purposes of training new pilots, it is also very much at home on the supercarrier in DCS World. Now, unfortunately, in the current version of the mod, we currently have some limited functionality when it comes to the supercarrier. As you could probably tell, we can definitely use the ground crew to taxi out of a parking spot, and they can guide us all the way out to the launch point. But unfortunately, we cannot use radio communications with the supercarrier, and although you can certainly still do a carrier break, come in and land on the supercarrier, the simulation does break down a little bit as the ground crew tell you to fold your wings after landing, which you can't do, and of course until you can somehow do that, they won't guide you to a parking spot. So hopefully those issues will be fixed in the new upcoming version 1.2. Which is highly anticipated. I think it's been in the works for a little while, and it should hopefully fix some of the other bugs with this mod, which are by no means groundbreaking, apart from one, which I think I find personally the most immersion breaking, which is the aircraft has a little bit of a forward rake when it's sitting on the ground or taxiing, because the oleos on the landing gear aren't compressed as much as they should be, and the trailing landing gear just isn't sitting at the right angle, so the aircraft has a little bit of a nose forward rake when it's taxiing on the ground, unlike the way it should sit on the ground in real life, unfortunately. Once again, that's hopefully something that's going to be fixed in the future. But apart from that, there are some other small graphical bugs, things like the rain droplets flow in the wrong direction on the right side of the canopy, the launch bar can flicker, and unfortunately these things seem to be present in most mods in DCS World, with the exception of a few. So I really hope that they can iron those out in the future, because apart from that, I only have really good things to say about this mod. The 3D model, although may not be the absolute pinnacle of DCS technology for full fidelity modules, even for a mod, I think it looks fantastic. I think the interior and cockpit is excellent, and the level of detail is way more beyond than what I think is adequate. And I think the reflections and everything of the sunshine sometimes just make it absolutely look absolutely beautiful. As you can see, I'm wiping out the flight controls here just for a bit of fun, as I'm using a force feedback joystick called FF Beast. Check it out in the description below if you're interested. It's absolutely incredible. And of course, I've tuned it to fly with the DCS VNAO Goshawk, and it feels absolutely amazing. With the flight model and the way the aircraft acts and reacts with all its vibrations as you do the catapult launch there, and then as you approach stalls and various things of that nature, you really get a huge amount of feedback for the aircraft. You can really fly. And because this is of course a conventional flight controls aircraft, it's not fly-by-wire, it is the only conventional flight controls jet that the US Navy pilots will fly before they move on to the fly-by-wire F-18s, F-35s, and various aircraft of the 4th and 5th generations. Now, as I've mentioned many times before, especially when flying with force feedback, but of course this is partly true flying with regular joysticks as well, is that aircraft which are not fly-by-wire tend to always be way more fun to fly because they give you so much more interesting feedback. They require a much better pilot to fly in the limit. This is especially true when you're dogfighting and you have to fly the aircraft on the limit. It is really easy to stall one of the wings. You have to use a lot of rudder to try and keep the aircraft pointed in the right direction. If you use aileron, you might actually inadvertently stall the wing at high angles of attack and so on and so forth. And this really creates a very, very, very interesting aircraft to fly. But also the Goshawk is genuinely a fun jet to fly. It gives you a huge level of precision when you're flying in formation. Probably the best aircraft to fly in formation I have ever come across in DCS world. And I mentioned that a couple of times about a couple of jets, such as the MiG-29, recently the OV-10, which is super stable and super nice to fly formation. But I genuinely believe this aircraft, both in terms of its throttle inputs, in terms of its forward and backwards positioning, how easy that is, how easy the directional control is, and how smoothly it reacts to inputs to stay in really nice close formation. I think it's absolutely phenomenal. For anybody wanting to learn how to fly an airplane in DCS, especially if you're learning how to fly formation in DCS, I would skip everything out there and go straight to this free, completely standalone mod. You don't have to download anything. You just download the mod completely for free. So you can get DCS for free, and you can get the VNAO T-45C Gashawk for free as well. Absolutely opens up a gateway to really fun flying, and you can definitely tell why this airplane has been selected by the US Navy to train its pilots, because it is so predictable and so steady and so easy to fly when it comes to normal flying. However, when you're doing BFM, which is extremely fun in this aircraft, you can definitely pull some G's in it, and it's extremely fun to maneuver in my opinion, but it requires a certain amount of skill and a certain amount of precision and patience in order to get the most out of it, as I've mentioned before, with all the wings buffeting and everything. And the interesting thing is you will find a lot of videos online. If you watch Growler Jams, great guy doing awesome videos in real life flying the T-45 training students, and if you have a look at some of his videos and how the aircraft reacts at certain inputs when it comes to dogfighting and practice BFM fights, you will notice so many similarities to this aircraft and the way it spins and stalls. And even if you have a look at the Growler Jams video where they intentionally take the aircraft out of control, put it into a 70-degree nose up, close the throttles, and the way it falls down and buffets and everything, it really is so similar to the way it looks in DCS world. That honestly, hats off to the modders who have created this. It's just a phenomenal jet to fly. And of course, apart from that, the T-45C is a dual seat trainer in real life, and it is multi-crew in DCS world. Now, unfortunately, there's a small caveat when it comes to multi-crewing the T-45 in DCS, and that is, unfortunately, the sounds don't seem to be synced up with the two cockpits. So in other words, wherever you leave your throttle as the instructor, even if you don't have controls, even if you're not flying the airplane, the controls don't seem to be synced up and the sounds don't seem to be synced up. So if you have your throttle set to idle but the guy in the front has it to max power, well, you're still going to hear the throttle as if it's at idle, and you're going to see the throttle as if it's at idle. It's not really a huge deal. You do forget about it relatively quickly when you're sitting in the back seat and the guy in front is flying, because you don't generally listen to the sounds all that much, especially if you're instructing him. But it would be really nice if they could rectify that going forward and sync up the controls and the sounds between the two cockpits, because it actually opens up an amazing gateway for instructing somebody from the back and teaching them how to fly, especially if you have a buddy who maybe doesn't know how to fly in simulators or doesn't know how to fly the airplane. I think it's an absolutely brilliant jet to start flying on, and it's a brilliant jet in general, in my opinion, to get anybody who has not a huge amount of experience flying DCS world, to get them into the mindset of a fighter pilot, getting them into flying a jet that has the MFDs, the HUD, all the symbology is basically a one-to-one, I think, with the F-18 Hornet. If you fly the Hornet or if you fly the T-45, you can switch between the two in probably a matter of minutes, if not seconds. And it really is brilliant to fly carrier breaks and practice carrier landings. In my opinion, a much nicer aircraft to fly compared to the vanilla F-18 in DCS world. Also, it's a little bit slower, gives you a little bit more time to react, and of course, as it should be, because this is a trainer designed to do that in real life. Now, I know some of you will be bitterly disappointed and probably won't care about this aircraft because it does not have any weapons except for some practice bombs. However, this is not the point of the T-45. It is a brilliant mod for practicing basic flying skills in a conventionally controlled aircraft, non-fly-by-wire, but it's also a brilliant aircraft to transition from basic flight training to a more advanced aircraft such as the F-18. And it fulfills the exact same role, in my opinion, in DCS world as it does in real life. So it is a brilliant aircraft to learn on and then transition into a more complicated, faster aircraft. And for those of us who are just die-hard aircraft enthusiasts, even if we have thousands of hours flying other jets in DCS world, well, this T-45 is just great fun if you want to fly some real-world procedures that probably form some of the US Navy's syllabus when it comes to basic flight training, whether or not that's flying carrier breaks, perhaps land-based operations, maybe even some procedural flying. Although, unfortunately, I have to say there are some limitations when it comes to the avionics of the T-45 mod, which I wish was maybe one of the things that had improved going forward in version 1.2. At the moment, some of the ILS functionality is limited, although you do get the ILS overlay on the HUD. You don't get it on the ADI. You don't get the glide slope and localizer overlays and deviations, which is a little bit of a shame, and it just means that we can't perhaps fly some of the approach plates and practice things of that nature, which this aircraft would be so great at because it's so stable. So if they just added a little bit of extra functionality there, that would really go a long way, and taking this already awesome mod and really turn it from a great trainer when it comes to basic hand flying skills to also a fantastic procedural instrument trainer as well, which currently, unfortunately, it just falls short a little bit in my opinion. So in conclusion, as you can probably tell, I am a huge fan of this mod, especially the flight model, which in my opinion really makes it feel so unique and interesting, from it being a conventionally controlled aircraft with linkages, cables, in combination with, of course, with force feedback. It really becomes completely alive. But even without force feedback, I can imagine that this is probably a great little airplane to fly and train on, so I would highly recommend it. I just wish they improved some of the graphical glitches and some of the improvements perhaps to the landing gear, because at the moment just falls short a little bit with some of the glitches, and also some of the limited functionality of the avionics, which, like I mentioned before, would just be fantastic, and we could actually do some really cool instrument approach flying, as it would be such a great platform for doing that. So with that said, folks, hopefully you've enjoyed this little overview. Please comment down below, tell me what you think, tell me if there's any other mods that you think are worthy of checking out. But for now, if you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to smash the like button. That would be greatly appreciated, and hopefully I shall catch you in the next one. Adios.